Welcome to Business Analysis Techniques. This is week 9 of the spring 2014 quarter. And this week we're going to read chapters 11 and 14. And again, we're not using the QM techniques. We have not used that throughout the quarter. So we're just going to focus on the areas of chapter 11 and 14 that talk about using Excel. You do have a discussion this week that talks about the benefits of simulation. But I'm going to go ahead and focus on, excuse me, I'm sorry, our assignment. And so here is our assignment. And on each of these first 4 problems, you're going to be provided with a problem to work that's from the book and an example problem that's exactly like this as far as the steps you'll follow. So on this first problem, you're going to work problem 11-9 on page 449. So when you go to page 449, you're going to see a problem 11-9. And problem 11-9 is going to tell you to refer to figure 11-21. So there's an illustration on that page, which is figure 11-21, and that's the figure you're going to use to go with problem 11-9. Now, it tells you to look at table 11.2 on page 445 as your guide. So if you go to page 445, you're going to see a problem that is a minimal spanning tree problem, the same as the problem you're trying to work on page 449. So on page 449, you're going to work that problem for your assignment. The problem on page 445 is an example of a minimal spanning problem, and it has the solution there for you. And the solution is explained each step how they solved it. So if you follow those steps and apply them to the problem 11-9, you'll be able to solve that problem as well. So we're talking about minimal spanning in that problem. And so when you read the chapter, you're going to see the instructions and explanation of minimal spanning on page 430. So page 430 is where you're going to see the steps for the minimal spanning tree technique. So it explains there that you're going to select any node on the network and connect it to the nearest node that minimizes the distance. And then from there, you're going to connect to the nearest node that's not connected and continue doing that until the entire network is connected. So you'll have to, of course, read the chapter for that to make sense. But it's on page 430, how to work the first problem. So you've got 3 different pages at a minimum that you'll want to refer to. Page 430 and the next few pages after that explains minimal spanning. There's an example of a minimal spanning problem with the solution on page 445. And then the actual problem you're going to work and the illustration that goes with it is on page 449. So this is a minimal spanning technique problem. Now, problem 2, you're going to work problem 11-19. It's on page 451. And again, there's an illustration that goes along with that problem that's on the same page. So you're going to solve that for your homework. The example of that problem with a solution is on page 446. On page 446, you're going to see this solved problem for petrochem oil refinery, and it's a maximal flow technique problem, which is the same as the problem you're trying to solve. And you've got the complete solution there as to how they arrived at the solution for this maximal flow problem. Now, inside the chapter, you're going to, when you do your reading, you're going to see the instructions for the maximal flow problems on page 435. So it explains how you can pick any path on the network and find the arcs with the smallest flow capacity, and how to, on each node, decrease the flow capacity in the direction of the flow by the amount of the arc. And so these instructions sound different than what we're used to, but as you're reading through the chapter, you're going to see what each of these concepts means, how to calculate what it's asking for. And then on page 446, you got a full example of how they solved this problem step by step. And so that you'll be able to apply all of that to problem 11-19, which is your homework problem. Then problem 3 here is a shortest route problem. And again, it's out of the textbook. It's problem 11-35. It's at the bottom of page 453. And then there's an illustration that goes along with it that's on page 454. So make sure you use the correct illustration. And there's a solved problem, a complete problem, just like this one for the homework, with the complete solution spelled out on page 447. So this tells you how we solved a shortest route problem. The instructions for the shortest route problems are on page 440 in your chapter reading. So it gives you all of the steps. There's only 3 steps to solve a shortest route problem. So you'll go to page 440 and make sure you pay attention to that page when you do your reading. And the next couple of pages after that continues to explain the problem. Then on page 447, you've got a complete solved example. And you'll use that information to apply to the homework problem 11-35, which is on pages 453, 454. So on all these first 3 problems, you've got exact examples of a problem that is the same type and with the solution spelled out. So you'll want to, after you do the reading, make sure you pay close attention to the explanations on pages 430 of minimal spanning, and then on page 435, the maximal flow technique, and then on page 440, the shortest route technique. As you're doing your reading, make sure you pause at those and get a good understanding of those steps. Then you'll want to review closely the solved problems that are on between pages 445 to 447. These are going to be perfect examples of the problems you're attempting to solve. And keep those solved problems handy as you're going through the actual homework problems. Now, the problems 4 and 5 are from chapter 14. So we're going to convert over to a different type of problem for the last 2. And you're going to be using random numbers and VLOOKUP functions in Excel. So you'll read the chapter 14 and you'll learn how to use the VLOOKUP function. And so the VLOOKUP function basically tells you, or it allows you to tell Excel to find some number, like for example this number, find this number in a table somewhere else. So you'll be able to find that number in this table. And then you can tell Excel, okay, when you find that number, put a specific number from that table into this cell. So that's basically what VLOOKUP does for you. And you use the random number functions that are also described in chapter 14. It tells you how to have Excel select random numbers for you. So you're using both of those functions. So what you're going to end up doing is filling out this section. You're going to have this completed and this, and according to the instructions in the problem. So these are normally people find these a little bit easier, a little more fun to work than the first 3 problems. But you will need to read closely in chapter 14 about the random numbers and VLOOKUP. So then the last problem, it's another simulation problem using the same tools. You've got tables you're going to fill in. You're going to have these random numbers. You're going to use the VLOOKUPs to put information into certain cells. You're also going to use minimum formulas to put information into certain cells. So there's several Excel functions in chapter 14 that you're going to use to complete this problem. So if you have any questions, of course, as always, send me your spreadsheet and your questions and I'll work on those for you or help you with those. Yeah, I look forward to talking with you in discussion, and have a great week.